genetics, we have genetics, and then we have subgenetics, and we have deformities and differences. So, basically, you need to know the difference between what is healthy, what is normal, what isn't normal, what is okay, and what is just a slight difference. Like for instance, my crooked teeth. I have crooked teeth, and I've been drinking a lot of coffee. But basically, you need to know a lot about the dynamics of life. First of all, like I've been through a lot of medical problems just from the environment, from different people in my life, toxic foods, toxic chemistry, nature, disease, infections, you name it. I've seen a lot of things in my life. But when it comes to DNA and knowing the difference between an actual DNA condition that is harmful or just whether or not it might be slightly different according to the so-called norm, but it's not actually a disorder, or if it is a disorder, it's a very weak disorder, or even a medium disorder that only has so much to do with the way your human body reacts to any other object in the way of normality. So, we all have these really weak, possible, slight genetic differences. We all have our own personal identity to genetics, which some part of our proteome and our genetics are very much unique to only us. So, there's also subgenetic disorders that may be a part in the difference between genetics and subgenetics. Subgenetics, however, can influence your genetics. So at some point, it can become genetic because of something that is subgenetic, like a vaccine, or your microbiome could affect your genetics. Medicines, toxins, that could be subgenetic, that goes genetic. There's a lot of things in genetics that could somehow creep into the processing of the chemicals in the nucleus, where there are robotic proteins and polymerases and different chemicals that occur in the cells that lead up to a genetic mutation. Or even there could be subgenetic mutations where there's toxic chemicals that are even temporary or even long-term or even permanent that can change your body if they get in your body and make it a subgenetic mutation. Children and babies and old people and young people, and well, everybody has a potential for these so-called toxic events for genetics. But to identify a genetic disease, not only do you have to sequence all of the cellular and chemical structures of the body, and there are tons. Like, we are one big factory of all different sorts of chemistry and all different types of cells that organize themselves differentially. It's called cellular differentiation, that leads up to all different sorts of functional processing. So, that's why we have organs, is to produce certain parts of our body to do certain functions in each part of the body. Is pretty well a connected device that operates erratically in any one given human, but can be fairly normal depending upon how you take care of it, what your DNA is, what your DNA isn't, what other conditions you have, whether they're subgenetic or genetic. whether or not you have trauma or sustenance or whatever it is, vitamins. We don't even have a complete theory of physiology, vitamins, or pathology, or the medical therapy. None of these theories are complete here in 2023. So, like, you need to know that identifying this is the sequencing of the chemicals in the cells with artificial intelligence, imaging, and mass spectrometry, to name the primaries. You need to know your laws of physics, chemistry, and as many laws of biology that you can possibly attain. But to learn that this is one big differential process is basically an artificially intelligent program. Once you gather enough information about all the possible chemicals in the body, if you do mass spectrometry, you can actually sequence them with an algorithm, and if your algorithm is accurate, maybe with a supercomputer, you could probably get several different formalities out of that information. And but basically, to know the difference between a subgenetic or a genetic disorder is to do a lot of research in what the actual cause and effects are. So, like, if you notice in your child that there is a genetic thing that happened to your child that was also a part of your life, it could be a minor genetic disorder, which is like crooked teeth. Like, a lot of people have slightly crooked teeth, or, it doesn't mean that they're dysfunctional people. It just means that in the gene where they process that part of the body, it has two variations that lead it to jumble up in that sequence process of that part of the body, which leads to different size teeth, different sequencing of the skull. It doesn't mean that your brain is absolutely dysfunctional, because I have crooked teeth, but I have a really great brain. I think it's great. People may disagree, but they also can't prove their claims at this time because they didn't accurately measure me, nor were there any real, true, accurate measurements made in my life that people done of my body. Very minimal accurate measurements were done in my life. Some basic blood exams, mostly a few x-rays, a CAT scan, and a lot of lies were told. Okay, so when it comes to this, you need to really sequence a lot of information. There may be lies in what is said to be a genetic disorder, or even the severity of a genetic disorder may be a lie, and there may be things you can easily do to deal with a very weak genetic disorder. Okay, we shouldn't go running around thinking that just because someone has a slight genetic difference, that means that they're totally dysfunctional people and they should be cast into the sea with cement blocks on their legs. That's not the truth. You're just delusional to believe that just because someone is slightly different than you, which is automatic anyway, and that we all have to die. We all have at least one genetic disorder. It's called being human, and we're guaranteed to die after the process of the Hayflick limit. So basically, you need to know you can't just run around casting everyone down just because they're slightly different, or they're a little odd in some part of their body. You can't do this. Even if they're black, white, whatever, a little different here, a little different there, they're a little shaped differently, that doesn't mean they're not good people. Okay, so you have to learn that it doesn't mean you have to love them absolutely either, but respect, legal respect is always due, uh, unless otherwise there's crime or something. But this whole process of DNA sequencing against history of humans and what it means to be a human and everything that goes into the chemical cellular structures of humans, and that we are adapting and changing, and that we constantly are conflicted with our environment and the things we put in our bodies and the things that happen to us from the time we're being conceived from one single cell all the way up to the process of old age and the phases of life and the mitotic events and the time that we're processing everything in the world. I don't think that all of this is quite accurate yet, and I think you need to really step back and see what is genetic or subgenetic, because those two classifications basically can set you apart from a lot of things. And what is the real true accuracy of genetic machines and the validity of the science of biochemistry and the validity of human life itself? I mean, we love people and we care, but are we absolutely the greatest thing in the world? No. Animals seem to survive much better off sometimes in their harsh environments than we ever could. So like we are the greatest thing in the world to some extent, but otherwise animals are sometimes cooler than we are too. So I mean, I don't know, but this whole genetics game is not necessarily all figured out yet. I think that they haven't sequenced it all out accurately.